I just want to say he's talking to Gandhi here, Mahatma Gandhi. So go ahead.
Right. Cool. You are hanging on to the subject. Baba then advised him, you are striving and making sacrifices for the advancement of the poor. You love the farmers. It is very noble. It is real service. But do not think that you are responsible for their suffering, because such thoughts create sanskaras. The thought, however, is there, and that brings trouble. You try to please all and don't wish to hurt others' feelings. But considering the numerous parties, castes, and creeds in India, it is not possible for you to keep all pleased. That's the end of the page. You want me to read that? If you keep if you keep the Hindus pleased, you will wound the feelings of the Muslims, and vice versa. If you try to please other parties, the Congresswallas would not like it. So you're always in a fix. But from now on, always leave the results of your actions to God, which will bring you satisfaction. Your aim is good and highly praiseworthy, and that is the noblest reward. Gandhi admitted, I am imperfect and full of desires, but the people must know that. They must know that. I have not attained perfection and have many drawbacks, which people should understand. Once they know my weaknesses, they will have to put up with them, and it is only proper that I make them aware of my shortcomings. I do have the conviction whatever happens is God's will. Referring to Jamshed Mehta, Gandhi remarked, he is the most honorable person in Karachi. He is most worthy. I will telegram him tonight that I have seen you, Baba Sahib, and will ask him why he did not interfere there, so that I could have spared more time to meet with you. When will such a time come again? I received your monthly magazine, MEHER message, in Yarra prison when incarcerated there. At the time, due to all the confusion, I had no time to read it and only glanced at it curiously. But from the time after reading it, but from that time after reading it, I wished to meet you one day. Now that day has gone and the meeting has taken place. I am most happy. Tomorrow, I will surely bring back the case to you and accept whatever you select for me to read from what you have written. Gandhi then commented on Baba's silence. I am wonderstruck at your silence. 7 years. I keep silence once a week. How small it is before your silence. I understand the significance of silence. You have been silent for 7 years, and when you speak, what untoward events will take place? I am astonished. Before leaving at 10:30 that night, Gandhi extended a cordial invitation to Baba to visit his place of residence in London, and Baba agreed to pay a visit while he was in London. The next day, 9 September 31, Baba called Aga Ali, Rustam, and Chanji in his cabin and quoted these Urdu couplets. When the crow tried to imitate the gait of the swan, it only lost its own demeanor. The moment Farhad tried to imitate King Khusro, his task was spoiled. We know that eventually you will not deceive us, but by the time you respond, we will have turned to ashes. Footnote to page 1243. The couplets mean that even though the crow started walking like a swan, it still remained a crow. Likewise, Farhad, the great lover of Shireen, King Khusru's queen, tried to imitate Khusrau, but remained himself and failed. In the second quoted couplet, the lover says to the beloved, "We know that you will not deceive us, but by the time you pay attention to us, we will have died." Gunny was fond of these couplets and recited them often. The author of the first couplet is unknown, but the second is by Ghalib. Ghalib. I'm read out, Eugene.
Okay.
I'm dry.
Hey, Marvin, why
I
don't you
need-
continue?
I need
Okay,
some triple sec. Yeah.
and okay. In the afternoon, while the ship was passing Messina, many passengers gathered on the upper deck, including Gandhi and the men of his party, and Baba with Aga Ali, Chanji, and Rustam. The Indian politician, Sokat Ali, who had boarded the ship at Aden, saluted Baba reverently and later spoke with him for half an hour. Seeing Baba, Gandhi approached him with folded hands. While they were standing together, photographers started taking pictures. Within a few, let's see what that footnote was. No photograph has been located of Baba and Gandhi on board the Rajputana. Within a few minutes, Gandhi remarked, "I now take your leave. The photographers won't allow us a moment's rest." The brief discussion they had concerned food, and Baba explained to Gandhi about Plita's fast on only milk. Then the topic turned to Kadi, and Gandhi asked, "What crime have I committed? For the upliftment of the poor, I hit upon the idea of the charka, spinning wheel. I will meet with you tonight. At present, there is some work which needs my attention. I shall manage somehow to come at night." Gandhi came to Baba's cabin at 9 that night with the box containing Baba's book, which he had opened with the help of the ship's crew. Baba gave him certain chapters of the creation series for him to read. Referring to their afternoon conversation, Baba stated, "I wish to clarify the point about food and kadi. For years, I have been a vegetarian. While I was, somebody needs to mute there. When I was attending college, I felt restless and distressed if I missed a meal even once. But since my meeting with Baba Jan and her kiss, about which I informed you last night, I have become totally indifferent to food. Once, for 11 months in 1914, I remained only on weak tea. The marvelous thing at that time was that I did not even have a thought that I was not eating. I had no idea of what I was doing, yet I kept quite healthy. Besides not eating for 11 months, I did not sleep at all. With open eyes, I would lie there gazing about me. My parents felt distressed for me. My mother first took me to be mad. Then a doctor named Barucha was called to give me morphine injections, but to no avail. I had no sleep at all during, one second. Oh, I had no sleep at all during that period. Thereafter, when I started eating, it was vegetarian, and there was no fixed time for my meals. Frequently, I would fast for a few days, and at times for months. Then I would take either milk, weak tea, or just water, but I continued to fast. Although remaining only on water, I would take foot journeys, walking 25 miles a day. And though I used to eat at times, it was not at any fixed time, but only when I felt like it. My mandali have also been eating only vegetarian food for years now. I would rarely make any of them fast on milk. However, once when you were in your Vada prison, I kept over 20 of my mandali fasting on just milk for 2 or 3 months, but none of them felt any discomfort. A Parsi named Pleader has been living only on milk for the last 2.5 years. He is quite healthy and happy. Not only does he live only on milk, but he is locked up in a room, not speaking with anyone, and observing strict silence. He is also forbidden to read or write. Over and above that, he is deprived of my presence and company continuously, as I am always on the move from place to place. Even in Nasik, I do not see him. During this period of 2.5 years, I have hardly seen Pleader more than 10 or 12 times. Still, when I inquire through someone about him, he indicates that he is happy. Ganji interjected, "It is nothing to remain on milk in seclusion, but it is very hard not to speak with anyone or not to read and write." Baba nodded, then continued. "There is another devotee of mine named Dixit in Kolhapur at a school there. He has also been on milk for the last 12 years, though he takes bananas with it. He is quite fit and works all day. He is married and has a wife with whom he lives, yet he never touches her at all and practices a life of complete celibacy. It is quite astonishing to be a true brahmachari, celibate, yet married and living with one's wife. In all respects, the man is quite good. He has devoted his life to the service of the youth." "I think I have received a letter from someone named Dixit," Gandhi said. "He must be the same. He asked me to meet Meher Baba Sahib as soon as possible. However, at the time, I was occupied with other matters. I have kept his letter with me with a view to one day see to it." Summarizing what he stated about food, Baba concluded, "It comes to this. Milk is the best food. It sustains the body and purifies the mind. And the more the mind becomes pure, the more it can be controlled. Desires become less, which is necessary for spiritual aspirants, as there is no progress on the path without the mind being under control. So long as desires and longings persist, the mind cannot be controlled. From that standpoint, therefore, milk is the best food." Gandhi replied, "My experience is similar. To keep good health, milk is necessary." Changing the topic, Baba stated, "Now I wish to clarify the subject of kadi. As you say, everything has two sides, one material and the other spiritual. There are two main things about the material aspect. One is that it should be cheap, and the other is that it should conform to one's nationality. I always dress in clean, simple clothing. For several years, I wore a coat made from a rough woolen blanket calmly. It was full of patches, and I only changed coats after 7 years because my mandali insisted. Therefore, my dress is plain, cheap, and clean, and it conforms to my nationality as I am a Persian subject. The British authorities raised an objection before my last journey to Persia over my not writing my signature, and the Persian consul was of the opinion that I, a Persian subject, should have a Persian passport. The current law in Persia under Reza Shah is that every citizen should wear a certain style coat and pants and a Pahlavi cap as a symbol of national dress, which means I should also dress like this. But I reside in India, and people naturally wish that I appear like an Indian. Between this Persian and Indian headache, I have selected a style of dress to my liking, which I wear. But in fact, both types of attire are the same to me. For those of my mandali who prefer khadi, I permit them to use it. My devotees, KJ Dastur, editor of Meher Message, Nusserwan Sata of Ahmednagar, Chin Kortkar or Charkar, RB Hire, Akolkar, and others asked me about wearing khadi, and I gladly consented. Footnote, RB Hillray was the managing trustee of Ahmednagar National High School and also the head of Mohan Printers. But I myself don't advise anyone about it because the things that I myself do not, but the things that I myself do not do, I cannot ask others to do. For example, a man may be addicted to smoking, but he does not tell others not to smoke. Your propagation of khadi is credible. It is cheap, and besides, it provides a means of substance to the poor who weave the cloth. It is good in all respects. For those who want to use it, I willingly allow to do so, but I cannot ask others to wear it for the reasons that I have explained. After a brief pause, Baba continued. While on this subject, let me tell you an anecdote. The Parsis defame me and call me shaitan, devil, simply because I do not eat meat and fish. I don't drink liquor, and I don't behave badly. Their definition of a Parsi is that he should be a non-vegetarian, drink wine, and lead an immoral life, while at the same time wearing the religious symbols of the Saja and Kusti, visiting the fire temple and paying heed to the priests. Thus, by their behavior, they themselves are in fact devils. In short, a Parsi may do what he likes, but he is considered a puka, true, faithful Zoroastrian, if he simply wears the religious symbols. A fellow Zoroastrian, Colonel M.S. Irani, once came to Meherabad. At that time, I was staying in a small cabin shaped like a table, which seemed to look like a chicken coop to him, and the austere, simple atmosphere of Meherabad disgusted him. To vent his spleen on the pretext of disclosing unworthy wrongdoings of fake sadhus and saints, he involved me also in the columns of the daily press. Colonel Irani's actions are an example of a misunderstanding. He is really my friend because he too is mine. It is only one soul inhabiting the same persons of my friends and enemies. It is the same one soul in everyone. If a person gently rubs his cheek or slaps himself with the same hand, he would not feel upset at his hand because it is his hand whether it soothes or slaps. Likewise, all my well-wishers and those who criticize me are mine. All belong to me and all are equal. Upon mention of Colonel Irani, Gandhi interjected, "Is he the Colonel Irani from Belgaum?" Chanji answered that Colonel Irani had worked at the civil hospital in Belgaum in 1927. Gandhi, yes, I know him. Imagine that. Commenting on Parsis, Gandhi observed, They upheld my civil disobedience movement and cooperated with me splendidly. The Parsis of Bombay really worked wonders. Mentioning his imprisonment, Gandhi remarked, when I was sentenced to prison, it was arrest in a way, both physically and mentally. I was saved the innumerable bothers of everyday life and had time to think and study India's situation. Baba continued, explaining about the opposition he faced. Why are the colonel and the Parsis against me? Simply because I don't eat meat and I don't drink alcohol. To them, the teaching of their religion consists of eating, drinking, and being as merry as they like, wearing the sadra and kusti, and living a life of riches in public, which is quite sufficient for them. The priests are responsible for all this. The priest class proves to be an impediment in everything. Pointing to Gandhi, if you gain independence, do this first. Arrest all the purohits, dasturs, and mullahs, parentheses, Hindu, Zoroastrian, and Muslim priests. Do not use violence, but deal with them firmly. Deal with them vigorously, because it is an important, big work. And unless you send them all to your Ravda prison, they won't improve. On the contrary, they will become worse. Baba concluded, for the one to whom everything is a zero, what is it to him whether it is this or that? To him, all are equal. Commenting on the current political crisis in India, Baba stated to Gandhi, first solve the question of Hindu and Muslim unity, and as far as possible, allow them separate electorates. Let them unite and fight a battle for power. Joint electorates are good, but the Muslims persist for separate electorates. So for the present, let them have them. They themselves will advocate joint electorates immediately, and then there will be some stability. But if you try for joint electorates now, it won't last. As far as possible, present your demands firmly at the conference in London. Whatever you have thought of and decided to do, demand it as your right. Let the British decide to grant it or not, but you must be persistent in your demands. The British won't grant everything, full dominion status to India. It is doubtful because whatever decision was made in the first roundtable conference, they will adhere to that. If they don't give anything, and if you have to return empty-handed, do not be concerned, because whatever agreement you may arrive at is good. And if you don't do that, no one else will. So let there be some workable outcome. If not, you will have to offer civil disobedience as an alternative. Considering the present political climate and atmosphere, violence may erupt, which would be quite hard to control. If the youth adopt violence, it will be most disastrous and harm the essence of spirituality in India. In case you return empty-handed and have to conduct nonviolent civil disobedience, it would be the best. It would not harm India just now to undergo more suffering. These agonies will result in more preparedness. Really speaking, the root cause of every good result is suffering. India is considered to be the land of spiritual greatness, of avatars and saints. To sustain this spiritual greatness, there must be the strength to bear these miseries. Europe has material greatness, but it must go. Another major difficulty is the untouchability problem, prejudice against the Harijans in India. It is the greatest evil. With the Brahmins, it is sheer wickedness. They have deep-rooted past sanskaras which cannot be easily wiped out. The main cause of the ruination of any community in India is the priest class, who, to serve their own selfish ends, have become the props to perpetuate religious rites and rituals. These comments by Baba concluded their meeting. Before leaving, Gandhi reminded Baba that he was invited to stay with him in London, and Baba agreed to see him one day while there. Gandhi said, I will arrange for your stay in a sarai, a dharamshala, as wherever I go, I stay with my people. 2 or 4 more won't matter. At least I will have the benefit of passing one night in your company. Will that day ever dawn? Baba gestured. Of course. At 10 that night, their second meeting came to an end. The next day, Thursday, 10th September 1931, Baba sent Chanji back and forth to Gandhi's cabin. Baba sent him some additional writings and messages, inviting Gandhi's opinion about them. However, Gandhi had no opportunity to meet Baba during the day. After dinner and a discussion with the Mandali, Baba retired for the night. Soon after, there was a sudden knock on the door. Gandhi had come again to see Baba. Forgive me, today I am somewhat late. If you are resting, I will leave, he said. Come in and sit down, Baba gestured. But what about yourself? Do you have the time? Okay, why don't we have another reader? Rosalie, why don't you read?
Okay. To listen to you, I can snatch the time from somewhere. You may explain without hesitation. Look, I have taken my seat and will remain seated. I will stay as long as you wish. Where will I ever get such an opportunity again? Gandhi was in a very happy mood, and Baba welcomed him to express his views on his writings. Gandhi stated, these writings of yours should be in their original form, else they will lack sweetness. Whatever is yours, and whatever is from others is others. I have gone through your sayings and have grasped their truth. All these I have drunk and digested. I have clearly understood what you wish to convey, but the writings by other new, raw, and inexperienced hands are difficult to follow. K.J. Dastur has an eye only for grammar and language and murders the sweetness of your original words. There is as great a difference in your description of a thing and Dastur's translation as between heaven and earth. Your saying go is not merely a word. Behind this go is your power to make one go, which Dastur does not have. Suppose my son has climbed up a tree, but finds himself in such a predicament that he can neither climb further nor come down. He just keeps hanging on. I tell him I will bring a mattress, but it is doubtful that he can hold on until my return. And if he falls down, he may be lost to me forever. So remembering God, I tell him, jump down. Although I have no strength to catch him, I raise my arms and he jumps. No one is injured. When the boy was ready to leap from such a height, it was not due to my telling him to jump. No, behind these words were a father's love and faith. The child thinks, I will fall into my father's arms and he will save me. With this belief and confidence, he jumps. I catch him and he is saved. Similarly, there is a vast difference in your saying go and in my or anyone else's utterance of the same word. Regarding your book, whatever you have written by hand in English in the book, and whatever you want to express cannot be expressed in English. I suggest that such works ought to be written in Sanskrit or Gujarati. A new page. First and foremost, there are no appropriate words in English for some or most of the terms, which would bring out their real meaning. For instance, avidya in English is ignorance, that is, the want of knowledge. But the term ignorance does not carry the true meaning and connotation of avidya, which it can never evoke. What is avidya and nothing else. It just cannot be translated. The reason for my saying this is that though I am able to follow your writings, it might be difficult for others. So if your writings are kept in Gujarati, it is better because they can be explained better in Gujarati. Gujarati is more useful here. Baba remarked, I can write all this much better in Persian than in English, because Persian contains the equivalent Sufi terms. And I also write much better in that language. In English, these things cannot be as well explained as they can be in Persian or Gujarati. Gandhi concurred, those languages are the best. There is no harm if you write in Persian, because the knowledge you are gifting, the philosophy you are preaching, and the new light you are showing will be a help to the desirous and the inquisitive who can read and understand Persian. When such a book of excellence is published, people will hasten to learn Persian, enabling them to translate it properly. So you'd better write in Persian, not in English. What harm is there if only a few can read it? When the time comes, the book's translations will be published, and then its worth will be known. If you write in Gujarati, it is better still. No, it is best. But it should not be in English, as it is hard to understand its meaning in that language. These days, such things in Gujarati are very necessary. The more this knowledge is spread, the more the benefit. And I am quite ready to render whatever help I can in this regard. Addressing Chanji, Gandhi said, you may write to me at any time regarding this matter. Gandhi's comments referred mostly to the master's discourses as published by Dastur in the MEHER Message magazine. When Gandhi referred to whatever Meher Baba had written by hand, he meant the secret book, a few pages of which had been given to Gandhi to read. Gandhi continued, I have read all your sayings today, which I also understood fully. They are fine, yet I find they are quite distorted. They are bereft of their sweetness and importance when put in Mr. Dastur's language. However simple your own original style may be, however faulty from a grammatical point of view, it has that sweetness and significance which this quotes polished end quotes version does not. I have read and studied the scriptures very deeply and hence I can make out what you mean to say behind these words. But the language in which they are presented to people is quite erroneous and conveys quite another sense from the original. It is due to the editor's desire to give it a garb of flowery language and make it more impressive. On the contrary, it quite alters the sense and murders the spirit behind it. So, to beautify the language by doing away with your original terms and expressions and polishing them has taken the taste out of it. The words have lost their beauty. The words of saints and masters require no gilding or garb of academic expression and embellishment. Their beauty is in their simplicity. They have a deeper inner meaning. The name of Omar Khayyam has become immortal due to the translations of his Persian rubaiyat into Western languages. Pure gold is gold, and impure is adulterated. Where is the need for embellishment of words that have come out of the mouth of a dinyani, knower, seer, like you? Therefore, these messages should also be put in simple language, as the meaning contained in such short, pithy sayings can only be understood and appreciated if your originality is maintained. The originality turns into imitation, and the worth is valueless if the language is polished. It really would be better if you write them either in Persian or Gujarati. Looking at Chanji, who was interpreting Baba's alphabet board during the exchange, Gandhi said, footnote, Chanji was Baba's secretary at this time and would keep copies of Baba's letters, as well as his own diaries in English, Persian, and Gujarati. It is due to his efforts that we have a record of these conversations between Meher Baba and Mahatma Gandhi. Write to Mr. Dastur, write him from me, and tell him to pay less attention to the construction of language while publishing Baba Saheb's discourses, sayings, and messages. Also, tell him to pay more attention to maintaining the original terms and words than to the beauty and grammar of the language. What necessity is there in polishing these things? To do so is an injustice to such excellent writings. If Dastur accepts what I say, then he should publish a footnote in the magazine each time he alters Baba's writings. The writings that the reader grasps and finds beneficial are by Baba, and those found difficult to understand are from Dastur. With proper footnotes, the reader may know that the translation is by Dastur and not in its original form as expressed by Sri. This clarification should be there. Write him in my name to do this at once, starting with the next issue. You should write him right now, as the night mail will be going soon. After more discussion regarding India's struggle for independence, Baba ended the meeting by remarking, try as much as possible to do as I have told you. Gandhi once again reiterated his endearing invitation to Baba to see him in London and Baba consented to visit him. Baba and his companions were to disembark at Marseille the next day. Before leaving the cabin, Gandhi told Baba, "If it is possible tomorrow to free myself from the crowd in Marseille, I will meet with you." He then asked Baba, "When will you break your silence? I am very eager to hear the first words you speak. Won't you speak soon? I hope it won't be long. If your influence is so great that you can impress people so deeply without talking, I can imagine what you will do when you speak. You should speak soon." Baba dictated in reply, "I am just waiting for that. I will speak soon. The time is near." The Rajputana landed at Marseille in the early hours of Friday, 11th September 1931. Footnote. Gandhi was received at Marseille by Madeleine Roland on behalf of her brother, Romain Roland, who was ill. Gandhi was hailed as the spiritual ambassador of India. He told reporters, "I am going to England to realize the dream of my life, the freedom of my country." The Rajputana, wait a minute. Meher Baba stepped onto the shores of Europe for the first time at 8 that morning. Meredith Starr and Herbert Davy were waiting to receive him. Baba was dressed in a white sadra and a brown imitation chinchilla coat with a pink muffler wrapped around his neck and head. Much correspondence had taken place with Meredith Starr, 41, since he had left India 3 years before, in December 1928, thus establishing the master's link with the West through him. After leaving the ship, Baba, Rustam, Chanji, Aga Ali were taken to refresh themselves at the Hotel Geneva, where Meredith had booked rooms for them. Baba left the liner in a hurry, and no other meeting took place between him and Gandhi. On Meredith's return from India around July 1929, he had started a meditation retreat at Combe Martin in Devonshire, England. A footnote. Meredith's wife, Margaret, was born in Combe Martin, so it is possible she was partially responsible for the choice of this particular place to start a retreat. It was founded in Meher Baba's name. In this secret garden of England, the birds had gathered. It was their plaintive song of longing which the avatar had heard, and he responded by coming in person to the West. Later that afternoon at 1:30, dressed in Western attire, Baba, Chanji, Rustam, Ali, Meredith, and Herbert departed by train from Marseille for London. Seated in the train while looking at Herbert, Baba remarks that Herbert's features and build resembled Bajifdar's. Herbert had worked hard and sincerely in taking care of the group's travel arrangements and comforts. For Baba and the Mandali, Herbert had arranged for vegetarian food, and in this way was paying close attention to every special request of the master. On 12th September, They arrived in Paris at 5:30 a.m., where they were met by a British woman named Enid Eliza Corf, 32, who worked for the Texaco Oil Company in Europe and was a friend of Meredith and Margaret Starr. They continued their journey by train and ferry, the Biarritz, via Boulogne and Folkestone, and reached Victoria Station in London at 4:15 that same cold, wet afternoon. Mahatma Gandhi was on the same train until Folkestone, but traveled secretly to London by car. There was a tremendous crowd at the London train station waiting to receive Mahatma Gandhi. But for the Lord of the universe, who was traveling incognito, only a few had come for his reception. Yet these few came with the song of love ringing in their hearts. And only true heroes are received with love songs. Baba was happy to see them and shook hands with them, stunned by what they saw, by what they felt. Kitty Davy, Dick, and Audrey Ince fixed their gaze on him, like the Indian partridge absorbed in gazing at the moon. None could imagine how many pages of the book of their past lives the avatar was reviewing as they stared at him, awakening their hearts with the echo of his song. Baba's silence was speaking in their hearts, and that conversation only the hearts can record and understand. Age absorbed every detail, but it can never be adequately expressed in words. Herbert Davies, 32, was a medical student in London and had heard of the Devonshire retreat from one of his college friends. In March of 31, he visited there at the end of his term, ostensibly to find a place where his older sister, Catherine, could recuperate from pleurisy. He met Meredith and Margaret, who explained to him about Baba.
So older sister Catherine, is that Kitty?
I think it's Kitty, yeah. Yeah, there it is. Herbert had been interested in meditation and spirituality since serving in the army in India during World War I. He had studied the lives of different masters from the East, so it was not difficult for him to accept Baba. He wrote his sister Catherine about the retreat, and Meher Baba, Catherine, and Meher Baba. Catherine quotes Kitty, end quotes, Laura Davy, 40, who was working as a music teacher, and soon after receiving Herbert's letter, she also visited the retreat. Both were at Devonshire in July when the cable arrived, announcing Baba's intended visit in the fall. Herbert had been so taken with Meredith and Baba that he had decided to forego his medical training and instead accept a position as an English professor with the League of Nations program in China. He would then be able to earn a large salary, half of which he could donate for the East Chalicombe retreat and Baba's cause. Kitty was waiting for the group at Victoria Station, while thousands of other people were looking forward to seeing Mahatma Gandhi pass by. Kitty was waiting for her beloved, the sole dweller in her heart. The master had prepared her internally for the awakening which was about to occur. Herbert had made arrangements for Baba to stay at his parents' house at 32 Russell Road, Kensington. And from the train station, Baba went to the Davies house by taxi. Kitty helped Rustam with the burdensome bedding rolls and luggage, and they followed in another taxi. Enid went to arrange for some of the baggage to be sent to East Chalicombe. The road was lined with spectators waiting to see Mahatma Gandhi, but the British authorities had secretly changed his route, diverting Gandhi's car to another road to avoid a demonstration. Age watched as the King of Kings drove past them, and they tried to catch a glimpse of the person whom they thought was Mahatma Gandhi in the car. Who could recognize the emperor? To know of him, the sacrifice of many lives is required. One has to surrender everything to him and stand at his doorstep like a beggar. Because of this, the emperor is always surrounded by only a few beggars who depend on him, not to give them anything, but to deprive them of everything most near and dear to them. These beggars do not need anything. On the contrary, they want to empty their satchels and lighten their burden, thus shedding the garb of illusion forever by becoming his slaves. The avatar is always in search of such slaves. To make them his slaves, he descends among them and becomes friends with them. To reveal himself to those who belong to him was the real reason why Baba had come to the West. Age would one day muse at the irony of the scene as Meher Baba's car slowly made its way through the streets of London. This is a quote. "Oh, people of the world, waiting for a glimpse of Gandhi, you are not yet ready to become friends with the emperor. Your time has not yet come. The emperor is yours, but you have not become his. Your eyes are blindfolded, so you cannot see him," end quote. As Baba's taxi drove to Kensington, purposely taking an indirect route which led past the Foreign Office and Downing Street, Herbert pointed out Buckingham Palace and the Houses of Parliament. After this short sightseeing excursion, Baba reached the Davies house, and another beggar, Mary Margaret Crask, slowly opened the door, and also the portals of her heart, where the master was already enthroned. Margaret, 39, had also gone to Devonshire at the end of March that year, seeking a quiet retreat, and thus found out about Meher Baba, a former member of the Diaghilev Ballet of Russia and a prominent dancer. She had been conducting a ballet school in London with a colleague named Mabel Ryan. The following is Margaret Crask's recollection of the events leading up to her meeting with Baba. "I had read Gurdjieff, Uspensky, and other esoteric writers, but never found what I was looking for." Footnote. Sergei Diaghilev was a Russian ballet producer and art critic whose greatest protege was Nijinsky. George Gurdjieff was an esoteric teacher of music, dance, and spiritual practices. and one of the forerunners of Eastern philosophy, Sufism and Tibetan Buddhism in Europe and America. P.D. Uspensky was a Russian mathematician who became a pupil of Gurdjieff's thought. Between 1929 and 1931, everything I valued disappeared. My father died, my mother died, the man I was in love with died, Diaghilev died, Anna Pavlova died. So I was in quite a bad state. I had spent my life looking for God, and I now thought it was all nonsense. I was not going to look anymore. I had had enough. I resolved to go somewhere to recover enough to decide what to do next. On my way to Hastings in South England, where I had gone to judge a dance competition, I met a woman named Dorothea who approached me at the Victoria Railroad station and asked where I was going. I told her and she said, "How wonderful, that's where I spent my honeymoon." The woman wanted to go but had no money. On the spur of the moment, I paid her fare and we went together. On the way, I mentioned I wanted to go somewhere for Easter away from friends. She told me about a wonderful place down in Devonshire, run by Meredith Starr. She wrote to Meredith and it was arranged. She didn't tell me about it being spiritual. I wouldn't have gone if I had known. On the day I went, she came again to see me off. And as I was leaving, she said, "Oh, there's just one other thing. There are 4 days a day, 4 hours a day of meditation required there." I went to East Chalicombe for Easter in 1931 and was met by Margaret Starr. One had to walk 2 miles on a dirt road through ditches and fields to get to the retreat, a stone house on a hill. When I walked into the sitting room on the right, I saw Baba's picture on the wall and asked, "Who's that?" Meredith told me about Baba. I was stuck. From that moment, I knew something had happened. I stayed at Devonshire for 2 weeks, and toward the end of my stay, Meredith said, "If you work hard for 5 years, meditating every day, you will be fit to meet Meher Baba when he comes." But Baba came in 5 months. Having given up God, he decided to come to me. Margaret vividly recalled her first moments with Baba at the Davies house. The bell rang and I opened the front door, and there at the bottom of the steps stood the most appealing figure that one could ever hope to see. No sign of power, just a vision of gentleness, grace, and love that touched the heart immeasurably. He came up the steps, giving me a passing glance, and accompanied by Meredith, Chanji, and others, went up the stairs to his room in the children's nursery level. I remained in the hall. A few minutes later, Meredith came down the stairs and grandly said, "Meher Baba wishes to see you." Overcome by my nervousness, I said, "Wouldn't he like to see somebody else first?" Meredith looked at me sternly and said, "Meher Baba wishes to see you." I turned and climbed 3 flights of stairs to the most important moment of my life, the meeting with my master. He was seated quietly in a chair and gestured to Chanji to bring another chair and place it facing close to his. He then beckoned me to sit. For a moment or so, there was intense quiet. And then I had a strong feeling that it was important to look into his eyes. Courage came, and I did so, looking in deeply, deeply as far as I could go, as far as I could. I have nothing to say about what I saw. In fact, I don't know. I only know that from that moment, whatever rough treatment he may have handed out afterward, there has never been a moment's doubt as to his being the embodiment of love and life. Footnote. This from her book, Margaret Crass, The Dance of Love. Margaret later wrote to Chanji, once having met Baba, it seems that the whole of one's life had been leading up to that minute, and that even up to that minute, he had been guiding us to go through fogs, clouds, and storms safely so that we could meet him. That first meeting with him caused time to stop. It was just as if nothing else had ever happened and nothing else would ever happen. What wonders the master's glance can perform. This highly respected dance teacher was from that moment drawn to her beloved and remained at his feet forever. Kitty's room had been prepared for Baba's use, and within minutes of settling in the Davies house, Baba took off the uncomfortable English attire he had worn while traveling to London and donned his usual white sadra. Baba and his companions were served a lunch of rice, vegetables, and fruit. Baba called Kitty and Margaret up to his room and gave each a grape, explaining to them the significance of his prasad. He looked tenderly at Margaret and said, "It was your love that brought me to England, brought me here." He told Margaret she must come to Devonshire, that she was of his circle. Margaret at first protested that she had a dance school to run, but Baba insisted. Kitty noticed a small hole in Baba's sadra and wanted to mend it, but she felt too shy to mention it. Pointing to the tear, Baba remarked to her, "My robe is torn, so you should sew it. You are lucky to have this opportunity to serve me. It is the beginning of further service you will have to do for me." The emperor in torn clothing. What irony! But his beauty lies here. He who is infinitely rich and the possessor of untold wealth delights in wearing worn clothes. It means that he who needs nothing and is fully perfect always bestows his treasure on others, and herein lies his glory. At first, Kitty and the others felt shy before Baba. But what was there to feel shy of? They had taken their seat in the train and were eager to travel. But while traveling, one also needs to eat. Having Kitty sew the sadra first, in fact. Baba serving food to her. It was his love. There was no need to feel ashamed of one's deepest longings. Kitty understood, for the emperor's glance made her grasp things. And while she stitched the sadra, a boundless joy filled her heart.
Okay, thanks, Rosalie. Jean, why don't you pick it up here?
That first day, many people came to meet Meher Baba. Among them were Maggie Barton, Kitty, and Herbert's older sister, Martha May Cluse, Horace Fleming, an artist, and a Japanese jiu-jitsu teacher named Koizumi, who helped prepare vegetarian meals. Baba met them all individually and then stopped seeing visitors, deciding to have a private meeting with Herbert, Meredith, Kitty, Margaret, and a few others. During this occasion, Paul Robeson records were played. Footnote, Paul Robeson, 1898 to 1976, was an African-American actor and singer. Robeson was noted for his roles in Emperor Jones, 1933, and Showboat, 1936, and for his renditions of gospel music. Meredith had impressed upon these quote unquote new devotees, as he put it, the importance of meditation, concentration, and one-pointedness of mind, emphasizing earnestness and a serious, somber attitude with a minimum of talking when in the master's presence. Consequently, they were reserved despite Baba's warm welcome. Baba did not explain to them at the time that he preferred them to be frank and open-hearted. It was only the first night, and the next morning they were to leave for Combe Martin. Touching on the world situation, Baba remarked, "War is inevitable and it will break out after 7 months." Pointing to Herbert, he explained, "You are to follow me and work in China under my direct orders." Looking at Meredith, he explained, You have work to do in Combe Martin. Spiritual centers are to be opened, especially in America, Turkey, Russia, Persia, and England, and the Devonshire retreat will be such a center." Baba slept that night in Kitty's room, with Aga Ali near him on the floor. Chanji and Rustam stayed in Herbert's room. They had brought their bedrolls from India, according to Baba's instructions, and they slept on the floor. May Cluse's teenage daughter, Zilla, told her uncle Herbert that she would like to meet this Indian. Herbert at first thought a girl of 15 was too young to come into contact with the master. However, he asked Baba the next morning at breakfast, and Baba happily agreed to see her. Meanwhile, it was still very early, and Baba decided to tiptoe into Zilla's room while she was sleeping soundly. Baba bent over her, and Zilla opened her eyes and stared at him. Neither spoke. They just smiled at each other. Outside Zilla's room, Baba turned to Kitty and remarked about Zilla, "I see all of her past and all of her future. She has great work to do for me. She must come to East Chalacombe with you on Tuesday." Kitty herself was so moved by meeting Baba that she had trouble sleeping. She was sharing a room with Margaret. Kitty slept on a mattress on the floor and Margaret in a bed next to her. Sometime during that first night, Kitty either tugged on Margaret's arm or went near her bed and shook her half awake, saying to her, He is so wonderful, so lovely. In the morning, still bemused, Kitty had no recollection of the incident. At 7 in the morning on Sunday, 13 September 1931, Baba and the group left London in a rented car for Combe Martin, 232 miles away. As Baba was walking out the door, he asked Kitty if there was anything she wanted. She quickly responded, only increased capacity to love and opportunities for service. After a moment's thought, she added, and yes, spontaneous goodness. Baba replied, you shall have all in a very short while. Surprisingly enough, during the drive, the sun was shining, and the driver remarked, today is the finest day this year. To see the sun shine on a September day in England is a rare and welcome occasion. But when the sun was there with them, Age noted, how could there be no light? Even in autumn, Age declared, the earth's sun bowed to its Lord in reverence by shedding its light during his first days in England. They drove via the Great West Road, Slough, Reading, Newbury, Marlborough, Chippenham, Bath, Wells, Glastonbury, Bridgewater, Taunton, and South Molton. Baba, Meredith, and Aga Ali sat in the back seat of the large taxi. Chanji and Herbert faced them on the two folding seats, and Rustum and the driver sat in front, separated by a glass partition, with their luggage and paraphernalia. Along the way, Baba covered himself with his turban and a carpet. As he later explained, he was doing his spiritual work. Even though he was concealed, his fingers and hands characteristically moved swiftly under the covering. In Bath, Meredith took Baba to meet a Dr. Whitby for a few moments, and the man was highly impressed. They then visited Glastonbury, associated with the legend of the Holy Grail, Jesus's wine cup used at the Last Supper, which is supposedly buried there. After a 10-hour ride, Baba reached Combe Martin at 5 o'clock. They went to the 60-acre property of East Chalacombe, which was a few miles away, and where several Western devotees were awaiting the master's arrival. They included Esther Ross and her younger brother Kenneth, Milo Shattuck, Richard Mayer, Margaret Starr, Tom Sharpley, Mrs. Helmer, Charles Purdom, Enid Corfey, and Dorothy Cousins, all of whom had contributed money toward Baba's trip to England. Baba was tired from the journey and only glanced at the group, not stopping for anyone except Margaret Starr, whose eyes were bathed in tears, which she could not stop. Her tears were to continue flowing during Baba's visit. The flow was to light a fire, after which only burning was to be her life's work. The water of tears was setting fire to her heart, but who knew it? This water is of both joy and pain combined. The pain could not be shunned because it was the pain of longing, and its presence brought a great joy. Among the persons gathered to receive Baba was an elderly American gentleman from Boston named Thomas Augustus Watson, 77, who was in England with his wife Elizabeth, 75. The couple had stayed at the retreat for a week in August and returned to meet Baba. Watson had worked with Alexander Graham Bell in inventing the telephone, and since retiring was searching for spiritual knowledge. Footnote, Thomas Watson assisted Alexander Graham Bell during the experimental period of the telephone. Resigning from Bell Telephone Company in 1881, he formed a company to build engines and ships. Watson, at one point, was an avid, quote unquote, medium. He and Bell had attended seances in Salem, and Watson, quote, spent hours listening to the weird hisses and squeals of early telephone lines in case they proved to be the dead trying to make contact, end quote. And that was parentheses, The Economist, 12 March 2005, page 15, end parentheses. Upon entering the retreat and climbing the staircase to his room, Baba stopped for a moment and placed his hand on Watson's head. Baba's divine touch had such a deep effect on Watson that the old man wept like a child. His heart seemed to be overflowing with love. About his first interview with Baba, Watson recorded in his diary, Baba was sitting when I entered the room. He looked at me, he smiled at me, he touched me lovingly on the shoulder, and like a flash of lightning, I knew what love is, what love can be, what the love of God is. And all the love I ever felt seemed a poor, feeble, paltry rudiment. I felt like a child. What more is there for me to learn in this world? Having observed similar incidents while on tour with Baba, Chanji took Watson into the library and made him sit down. Watson continued to weep for about 15 minutes and then became quiet. His eyes filled with tears, and he asked softly, "How long have you been with him?" "For 7 years," Chanji replied. Hearing this, Watson placed his hand in a fatherly way on Chanji's back and said, "My son, do you realize how fortunate you are to have been living in such close contact with such a great personality?" "Yes, sir, I do consider myself fortunate," Chanji answered. "It is his grace that I am near him." After a few moments of silence, Watson revealed, "In my 77 years of life, today is the first time I have experienced what divine love is. I have come to realize this with just a touch from Mir Baba." Chanji said, "Such a privilege is bestowed on very few." As age recounted, without Watson's asking, Baba had rocked the ground of his being. Watson's heart blossomed, and he saw a new light, the light that dispels the darkness of ages. It was wonderful how the master's work was manifesting. He was forging a link with Watson for a plan which, up to now, Baba had not revealed. Baba was planning on going to America from England, and Watson was to be his medium for arranging it. Baba's small room was above the lobby entrance, facing south, overlooking the valley of Combe Martin. Meredith would conduct visitors up to the room for short interviews with Baba. Yet Meredith still insisted on the usual routine of 4 hours of meditation per day. Meditation persisted despite the fact that the master, the object of their meditation, was with them in physical form. Despite the somber regimen, Baba did manage to slip away and meet with the Mandali in the dairy barn where Chanji and Rustam were staying, though Meredith tried to prevent this also. Baba went to the barn very early the next morning and sat on one of the cots discussing matters with them for some time. Herbert, Chanji, and Rustam shared the room, while Aga Ali stayed with Baba in the main house. Later that morning, it rained, while Baba met with each person individually. A versatile personality, Charles Benjamin Purdom, aged 48, author, drama critic, accountant, and editor of a magazine called Everyman, had visited Devonshire earlier that year on holiday and had been corresponding with Meredith. Upon meeting Baba, Purdom said, "I feel that something like a stone has entered my heart and is stuck there without dissolving. I am now terribly confused as to what it is." Baba dictated, "It is the outcome of the spiritual current and rays of the spiritual atmosphere here." He gestured for Purdom to sit beside him. After a few minutes, Baba asked how he felt. "Good, peaceful and calmer," Purdom said. Purdom later wrote in Everyman of his experiences with Meher Baba. "I have been brought by what seems like chance, but no doubt deserves some other name, into personal contact with a perfect master from the East. His eyes are large and beaming, lighting up his face, which radiates happiness." So we'll stop here, which was at the bottom of page 1262.